I'm Lauren
Exactly.
Alvarez. I'm so grateful to be here. I love helping families because helping families helps me. I'm the mother of four myself, and I will say sibling rivalry. I only have one left at home. Whew! But at one point, I had three children, six and under, and it was intense. I remember I brought little second son home from the hospital. An older brother who was 22 months said, "When you bring him back, Mama, go take him back." I mean, he was not happy about little brother being there. So I've had to learn a lot along the way. And I actually didn't learn about the book. This book, Siblings Without Rivalry, is the main book that I'll be pulling from. Um, that I didn't learn about that book until I was already through that intense time. It wasn't until my oldest at that point was 14. I'd wished I'd had the information a little bit sooner, would have been helpful. He's now 28. So I'm Lauren Alvarez. I'm a school counselor by day. And I have four children of my own. I have an eighth grader, a 14-year-old daughter still at home, and then I have three grown sons who are 23, 26, and 28. So, and what I wish that I could like freeze time because I mean, we could talk for 4, 5, 6 hours about sibling rivalry. So what I'm going to try to do is hit the highlights. I've also scanned and put some of the one thing I like about this Siblings Without Rivalry book is it's a really easy read, but it even has like cartoons in there. So typical ways that parents will say stuff that isn't helpful, but it's kind of like knee-jerk reactions and then suggestions on how in the same scenario you could say something different. So if you have any children that have read Diary of a Wimpy Kid series, it's kind of like that for grown-ups, but talking about sibling rivalry. So I want to, let you know kind of some of the things we'll cover and then have some questions kind of in your head. For you to be thinking about as we go through the presentation. The goal is for you to have a better understanding of the reasons for sibling rivalry, understand that conflict is a natural part of a human being. Being a human being, you can't get rid of sibling rivalry or any kind of conflict. It's a part of the human process. Learn ways to reduce jealousy and conflict in children, and also some prevention and intervention strategies, because there's ways that we respond to it that without realizing it, it's not helpful. It actually can continue that. Um, Let's see. Oh, good to know. The Metropolitan Library System has the book available for loan, so you don't have to buy it. Good to know. All right. Another thing too is, think about when you were growing up. Did you quarrel a lot with your brothers and sisters? I know that I was super close with my older brother. We were 2 years apart, and the two of us quarreled a whole bunch with our younger sister, who was 3 years younger than me, 5 years younger than him. And there were a lot of things that angered us and made us jealous. We lived in a very competitive household. The grown-ups set it up to be very competitive. My dad was very competitive. And so it always felt like everything was a competition. So, and we definitely kept score if we thought things were fair or not. And when I think back about especially some of the really mean interactions my brother and I had with our little sister, um, I wish I could go and undo a lot of those things, but a lot of times we weren't supervised to do that. So I don't think our parents were fully aware of, I mean, we were pretty awful to her. But the beautiful thing is, as adults, we're great. Because another thing that it mentions in the Siblings Without Rivalry book is if you have kids who are not allowed to express their feelings, even while they're learning to express them in healthy ways, sometimes they just express them. If all of that is stuffed and squelched, a lot of times they don't wind up having close connections as adults. Whereas kids who might have really not gotten along when they were kids and had some pretty intense sibling rivalry or those moments, you're actually working through a lot of things and you can form those bonds that you carry into adulthood. I know for all of us children, we are very close as adults. My brother passed away 17 years ago, but all of us, while he was alive, and then my sister and I were very close, and you would have never predicted that we could be that way. I also want you to kind of have these thoughts, some key questions. Is there anything that you do with your children that seems to help their relationship? Look at the evidence you already have, continue to do more of those things because every child is unique in what works for them. Is there anything you do that seems to make it worse? So this is where I'm a big kind of take the you know, bird's eye view is step back and think about the patterns of when the kids are fighting and disagreeing and arguing and not getting along. is there any way that sometimes you react that might make it worse that you've noticed? Do you remember what your parents did that made things worse between you and your siblings, that increased that hostility? I know for me, pitting us against each other in competitions, everything was a competition. Who could do their multiplication facts the fastest? Who know the state capitals? Who could do the months of the year backwards? I mean, it was like just competitions constantly. And I didn't like beating my siblings, but I didn't want to be the one who lost because I didn't want to get laughed at. So it was like this, I felt bad for winning some of them but I didn't want to lose them because then I was going to pay the price. So, and again, my dad thought that was fun. In his mind, that was fun. So he didn't realize how much hostility that created. And did they do things that decreased the hostility? Hey, what worked for you that maybe helped you with your sibling relationships when your parents intervened in that way? Do more of those things because we already have experience with sibling rivalry, most of us, unless you're an only child. But you're joining this class because you're definitely want to learn everything there is to know. I will say this was the most irritating part of parenthood. We could just be, it was a beautiful day, and then the bickering would start. And I did not, when they were young, use proper responses. So, and when my daughter was born, she was 9 years younger than her brothers, 9, 12, and 14 years younger. So there wasn't that intense sibling rivalry in that way. But I did have more knowledge because my youngest son, who was used to being the baby, he started to develop some pretty significant jealousy and started to keep score when she turned about 2. So I was able to use some strategies there. We'll talk about that in a little bit. All right, there are some causes for sibling rivalry. Siblings don't choose the family they're born into. They don't choose their siblings. And I can honestly say, if two of my sons, my middle and my youngest son, if they were in the same class at school, they would not have been friends. Their personalities when they were younger, their personalities still are incredibly different. But if they had been the same age, they would not have been friends. So them getting along was a lot more difficult just on the clashes in their temperaments. Now, as adults, they're great friends. And, my one son, my middle son lives out in Boston, and the youngest son has gone out to visit him and had a great time. So kids don't choose their family or who their siblings are. Then you throw in the whole blended family dynamic into the mix. So if you are in another relationship and you have children and the other person has children, and then maybe you have a child together, there's just so many different dynamics that can go on. So different ages and temperaments definitely help. Sometimes when the kids are close together, parents can tend to treat them as one instead of really seeing them as individuals. And also, what is interesting to a 13-year-old might not be interesting to a 5-year-old if there's a big age gap in that way. Their position in the family, their birth order. There's another really cool book, and in the handouts, I'm going to send you some really cool articles that I printed off. But there's this book called The Birth Order Book. And it goes into why you are the way you are based on birth order research. It's really even interesting too because it has the perfect marriage matches based on birth order. The ultimate marriage match is a firstborn girl matched with a youngest boy. So if it's just very interesting to think about just what research shows. Now, it doesn't mean other combinations can't work out, but just based on what research says, to have an oldest child mixed with a youngest child. So birth order definitely can play into it. Blended family issues, parental attitudes, how do we respond or, act about sibling conflict? And then jealousy for parental attention. They are in direct competition to have you, the parent, all to themselves. When a firstborn is used to having you all to themselves, and now we've got a new one coming in the mix, that can be really difficult for them too. So, all right. Now, there are some environments that increase sibling rivalry too. So, if your household environment competition is highly encouraged, that breeds a lot of sibling rivalry. If your environment, the expectations and standards are set too high, it's more like perfectionistic kind of tendencies, that can really increase sibling rivalry. If you have that, where a lot of your praise, your compliments, the attention is given to people based on their performance, that can be really difficult. That was a hard one for me. I was naturally better at school, than my brother, my older brother was. He really struggled in school, really struggled. He had untreated ADHD. We discovered that when he became an adult. Um, did always got in trouble, all that kind of stuff, and really struggled with memory. I had a memory that, was really quick. And so, I got more attention based on the fact that I outperformed in a lot of areas. I got more positive attention, but it was very conditional. And so I'm really surprised that there wasn't more jealousy between my older brother and me. We were really good friends from the get-go, but it was definitely an issue with us and our younger sister. Organization and monitoring, if there's not a lot of organization or the kids are kind of left to their own devices for a while, kids can be really cruel. And so with and not enough monitoring can have an environment that breeds sibling rivalry. And in the case with us when we were kids, I grew up in the I was born in 1969, so I grew up in the 70s and the 80s, where it was a little free range kiddos. There wasn't a lot of supervision. We'd be out all day and no one would know where we were. So, and another one too, if children are close in age and of the same sex, so like if you have two girls, two boys, parents tend to handle them as a unit instead of individuals. All of these things, these environments, research shows that sibling rivalry tends to be a little bit higher in those environments. So, I've got a great little story to help you understand maybe where some of this jealousy might be coming from. All right. So this is directly from it's on like kind of the prologue for the book Siblings Without Rivalry. And when I read this, I'm like, oh my gosh, that explains so much. All right. So kids are in competition for your love. Kids are in competition for your time. Kids are incredibly jealous about that. They know that they need you, and they want you all to themselves. So imagine you're in a serious relationship and your spouse comes home, puts their arm around you and says, honey, I just love you so much. I'm going to get another wife. So I'm going to do this from the perspective of me, being married to a husband. And so I'm the wife. So I'm just going to do it from the perspective of the wife. You adjust it to whatever your scenario might be. All right. So let's say my husband came home and says, honey, I just love you so much. I'm going to get another wife. And you'd be like, excuse me? Isn't that just like when we say, oh, honey, we love you so much. You're going to have a little brother. You're going to have a new sister. When the new wife finally arrives, you see she is very young and cute. And when the three of you are out together, people say hello, politely, but they're ecstatic about the new person. Isn't she adorable? Oh, you're so precious. And then they turn to you and say, how do you like the new wife? What would your reaction be? Might be seeing stars. What if then the new wife needs clothing? So your husband goes into your closet, takes out some of your sweaters and pants and gives them to her. And when you protest, he points out that, hey, you put on a little bit of weight. Your clothes are too tight anyway. They'll fit her perfectly. How would you feel about that? Wouldn't you say we go into our kids' closets and give away their toys and their stuff and sometimes even their room? And we expect them to be totally fine with it? The new wife is maturing rapidly. Every day she seems smarter and more competent. One afternoon, when you're struggling to figure out the directions on the computer your husband bought you, she bursts in the room and says, ooh, can I use it? I know how. Would you want her help? I don't think I would. When you tell her she can't use it, she runs crying to your husband, and moments later she returns with him. Her face is tear stained, and he has his arm around her and he says, what would be the harm in letting her have a turn? Why can't you share? What would your reaction be? All of these are similar scenarios to what our kids actually feel when a new sibling comes along. Or if you are in a blended family and you might even have, they might now have stepbrothers or stepsisters that are the same age. Or maybe your child used to be the oldest and now the new person, their child is older than them. I mean, so many different dynamics that can go on. But how would you feel? I know I would be overwhelmed with jealousy. I would not be wanting to cooperate. I would want to seek revenge. There's so many things that I would want to do. Um, and before, after all this goes on, finally you've had enough and you're like, I don't want her in the house anymore. It makes me very unhappy. Why can't you just get rid of him or her? And then your partner responds, that's nonsense. You're being ridiculous. You have no reason to feel that way. Have we ever used that phrase with kids? Yeah. You make me angry when you talk like that. If that's the way you feel, keep it to yourself because I don't want to hear it. Do we talk like that sometimes? Why do you have to be so negative all the time? Find a way to get along and don't come running to me about every little thing. How would that make you feel? I didn't only marry again for myself. I know you're lonely sometimes, and I thought you'd like some company. Don't parents say that? Oh, it's someone for you to play with. Well, what if you don't want to play with them? Come on, honey, cut it out. What do my feelings for you have to do with anything else? There's enough love in my heart for both of you. How would you feel about that? Now, I don't know if you are anything like me. Maybe you would have been like, I'd be fine with it. I wouldn't be fine with that. But yet we expect our children who are young without fully developed brains to celebrate this new person in their life, regardless of how it impacts them. When they're forced to share their toys, when we give away their stuff, when we rearrange room stuff, when we take the little one side, all those things that we do. If someone did that to me and my husband had a new partner, an additional partner in the house, I'd be livid and I wouldn't want to get along. So not to say that it excuses all behavior, but the whole goal of that is just to add a little empathy, see where they're coming from, understand what the source of that jealousy might be. Because I know I would probably be looking stuff up on the internet that, would not be okay about how to get rid of the new person. So that our kids feel intense feelings of jealousy and they are learning how to manage those big emotions. That's actually there's some benefits to sibling rivalry. It's a natural, healthy, and necessary. I call it social skills boot camp. Look at all the social skills they learn from sibling rivalry, resolving conflicts, negotiating, learning give and take, problem solving, standing up for themselves and what they believe, learning to win and learning to lose. These are all incredibly important social skills that your kids are having the opportunity to learn in the presence of sibling rivalry, in the presence of conflict with their siblings. If there was zero conflict, they wouldn't learn conflict resolution, negotiating, all those kinds of things. Now, it's not enjoyable all the time. It's not like a fun time. But when we can look at the positives that are kind of hidden in sibling rivalry, sometimes it'll help us not throw up our hands and be like, this is ridiculous. Look at it as, all right, this is social skills boot camp. Now, where we can make the difference in them learning these skills or not, a lot of it has to do with our responses. Now, again, that doesn't mean it's all our fault if they don't learn these skills. I'm not saying that at all. But our responses can be helpful or not helpful when it comes to them learning these different skills. A lot of us want our kids to like each other. We have this very unrealistic goal that our kids will like each other. Two of my sons, if they had been in the same class, they would have probably been arch enemies. Their temperaments could not be more different. They didn't even like each other. Now they do, but they certainly didn't at the time. Instead of wanting them and pushing for this unrealistic goal of them to like each other, focus on how to equip them with the attitudes and skills they need for their future relationships. Man, if they can learn to get along with someone they don't like, what an incredible gift that is taking them into adulthood because they're going to have to work with people they don't like. They're going to have to solve conflict in their own personal relationships and friendships and romantic relationships. It's not about who was right or wrong. That's not the focus. It's them learning to listen, learning to respect differences, learning ways to resolve conflict. And they can learn all of those things and not even like each other. And for some of you, you might have had intense sibling rivalry when you were younger, and you still don't like that sibling. But for a lot of kids, if we teach them some of these skills and help them learn some of these skills, especially managing some of the really hurtful things and how and when to intervene for those things, it can help them. And I know, actually the two of us who were the closest in adulthood at first were my older brother and younger sister. And he was horrible to her. But they had, some really good adult connections, talked through some of those things, and had fantastic relationship when he was an adult. But they like could not even stand to be around each other when they were younger. So they don't have to like each other. Maybe they will someday, but there's a lot that can happen. All right. Now there's some different types too, which I think it's important for us to be aware of. There's minor sibling rivalry. This is competing for attention, and there's a lot that we can just ignore. So, and the other way that we can be preventive is being proactive with how much time we spend with each individual child. I've included in the presentation a link to the five love languages of children. That's one of the classes that we had. And it really talks about what your child's love language is. How do they like to receive attention from you in a way that makes them feel loved? If you're proactive in how you show attention to your individual children based on their love language, that can really be preventive because there's not like this feeling, this empty emotional bucket, I guess you would say. It doesn't have as much competition for attention. But these minor competitions for attention, those are things that you can ignore. Now, there's some that are more significant where they try to pull you in as referees. And if we jump in and totally solve the problem for them, then they never get to learn the skills of conflict resolution and stuff like that. We can come in and we'll see some cartoons, like some examples of what that might look like and sound like. We can step in and we can offer a perspective shifting, but still leave them to solve the problem. But then there's serious types of sibling rivalry. There's physical or serious verbal harm, where it's nasty name calling, verbal bullying, physical bullying, hitting, kicking, biting, those kinds of things. And in those situations, you cannot ignore it. It's not a kids will just be kids. We have to stop them, separate them, acknowledge feelings, cool off, and then come back together to resolve the conflict. And we'll get into that in more detail here in a little bit. But for a lot of us, if we jump into every single minor, we don't have the energy for that. And those are minor things. There are times when it is significant and we do need to kind of step in and offer some perspective, but still not fix it for them. And then there are times where we have to step in. It is our job to keep our kids safe. And if they are unsafe with a sibling because of physical harm or serious verbal or emotional harm based on the kind of name calling they're using, then that is where we do have to step in and intervene. All right. Now, another thing to always think about too is I'm a big person that's looking at patterns. When is the sibling rivalry happening? Is it a certain time of day? Could some of their basic needs not be met? What if they're hungry? What if they're tired? What if they're bored? What are some of the basic needs that if we met those needs, probably the conflict and the bickering would go away. And I'm big on looking at what are your bedtime routines like? Are they getting enough sleep? What's the timing of your snacks? Because I know that when you've got a bunch of hungry kids become hangry kids. When is that conflict happening? Is this a morning thing? Is this a right when we get home from school thing? Because sometimes if you notice a pattern, then you can come up with a plan that's going to fix that pattern, and that resolves a lot of it. I work as a school counselor. So if we have a child with repeat behavior that is not working in the classroom, we start to look for patterns. When is this happening? We had one student who she did had a lot of breaks built into her IEP. And one thing that was happening every single day is she would take a break, right? She'd go back to her class. She at 12:30, she'd take a break at 1 o'clock, where she was supposed to go to the office and take a break. She wasn't in trouble. She was supposed to go to the office and take a break. And then if she was going to go to specials, she would go to specials. Well, she would, every time when it was time to go to the office to take a break, it would start a power struggle. And she would refuse to leave the classroom. And then she'd have a huge meltdown. And then it'd be all this kind of stuff. And then the teacher didn't get her break time and it was a hot mess. We did something as simple as right when she came into recess, that's when she took her break. She went to the office for her break. There was no creating the opportunity for a power struggle by waiting 30 minutes for that. That's when she took her break. And then she could decide if she went to specials or not. Just moving the time of her break solved 95% of the temper tantrums and meltdowns. So look at those patterns and see if you notice something. Sometimes we're so close to it, like we're so frustrated and so overwhelmed. At school, we have what's called a staffing. We get several heads in the room, and it's amazing how one person might have that idea. So that's where if you are in a relationship where you have a partner that you can bounce ideas off of, if you have a group of trusted friends that you can bounce some ideas off of, that can be a way to help you maybe get some clever ideas. All right. Now, there are some ways to reduce conflict. First off, what we're going to kind of go through is help your children accept their frustrations. Everyone is not going to be happy all the time. They're going to be frustrated. They're going to be frustrated with their siblings. Just like me, their mama is going to be frustrated with them, my children, who I love and adore. Help them learn to accept their frustrations. Also, let siblings express their feelings, but we have to teach them how to do that in non-aggressive ways. So I'll show you some wording that might help with that. And then let them decide whether or not they want to share. because a lot of sibling rivalry comes from not wanting to share their stuff. So we'll kind of address that. So first, let's kind of look into helping children accept their frustration. So here's a scenario, comes straight from Siblings Without Rivalry. Siblings need to have their feelings acknowledged. That's one thing, that if their feelings are not acknowledged and validated, that can lead to ongoing frustration, ongoing conflict. I know me as a grown woman, if my feelings aren't acknowledged, I can stay angry for a really long time. If someone just comes in and tells me how to fix a problem without even validating how I'm feeling about it, I can stay frustrated. The negative behavior might linger. So let's say your child says, I'm going to kill him. He took my new skates. They say that. Here are some possible responses that you could use that would actually be helpful, that would help them acknowledge their feelings. So these are three of the suggestions they have in Siblings Without Rivalry. First one is give them words for those feelings. You sound furious. I'm not going to focus on, you can't say kill. That's not okay. It's just your skates. Just give them a chance. Nope. I can acknowledge their feelings. You sound furious. That's what's behind that, right? Or I can give them words for wishes. You wish he'd ask before he used your things. I noticed a typo there. Wads for wishes. You wish he'd ask before he used your things. Or you can acknowledge their feelings and give them ideas for a creative expression of that. How would you feel about making a private property sign for your closet door? Would that make you feel better? These are all ways that acknowledge their feelings of being angry about the sibling using their skates without asking, but it doesn't get sucked down that rabbit trail of you can't say that and why can't you share, that just kind of like dismissing and denying the fact that they're upset about that. They're allowed to be upset about that, but I want to teach them what give them words for their feelings. We're always telling children, use your words, use your words. Well, what if they don't have the words? They don't automatically know what the word furious, how that attaches to how they're feeling at the moment. We're teaching them words for that, just like we're teaching them, math skills and multiplication facts. So give them words for their feelings or words for their wishes. Here's some beautiful things. I'm not sure, Erin, how well can you guys see from your perspective? How well can you see the cartoons? Does it show up pretty
Great.
clearly? Okay,
Yep,
great. Because as we
I can
go a
see it
little
great.
longer, I'll have to zoom in on some of them. So here is acknowledging their wishes. Children's feelings that are validated, even when they're frustrated, that actually helps them come to terms with their feelings. If children are not allowed to express their feelings or have their feelings validated in relation to their siblings, they will often go into adulthood with no emotional connection to them. So here's an example, and that's another thing I love about the book. Is they literally tell you what it looks like with the cartoon. All right. Instead of when the child walks in and said, send the baby back. You don't mean that. You love her. It's a very typical parent response. I am sure I used that response multiple times with my oldest son in relation to his younger brother. Um, Instead, a more helpful thing to do is you give them words for what they might wish. You don't want her here. Sometimes you wish she'd go away. Now, does that mean I'm going to send the child away? No, but I can validate and acknowledge their wishes. That's a very normal wish for a child to have who's jealous and doesn't want to spend time. You don't want her here. Sometimes you wish she'd go away. When we validate it, it's almost like I got it out and I don't have to follow through on that. Instead of, I heard him laughing about me with his friends. So what? That's how boys are. Very typical parent response. What if we responded this way? Express what the child might wish. That hurts your feelings. You wish he'd show some loyalty to his sister, I'll bet. Now, sometimes you're guessing about what they'd wish, but that's the that's why she's hurt. She wishes that he would be a nice brother when he's around his friends. You can express what her feelings might be in a wish, or actually helping them develop their emotional intelligence. Here's another one. He always decides to drum when I'm doing my homework. Just take it easy and close the door. Very practical solution. Here's what might be more helpful. Express what they might wish. That can be annoying. You'd wish he'd check with you before he starts to play. Yeah, I'm coaching my child to be more self-aware of what they're actually upset about. When I'm coaching my child to be more self-aware of what they're actually upset about, they can become better communicators. Better communicators have a better job solving problems. Right now, he just knows he's ticked off. Stupid brother keeps playing the drums. You think that's annoying. You wish that he would check before he started drumming. These are great potential solutions for acknowledging feelings. There's also ways that we can encourage them to express it in creative ways. So instead of what are you trying to do? Break her arm? You're a bad boy. Instead, no hurting your sister. You can show me your feelings with your doll. Give them an outlet that is not a person or person's person that you're directly hurting. Here's another one. Instead of she's mean, she never lets me go with her. Stop your whining. You know she doesn't want a kid sister tagging along. Encourage creative expression. It's no fun being left behind. Want to draw me a picture of how you feel? Just drawing a picture of how you feel releases that. Think about therapy. If any of you guys have ever done therapy and talked to a counselor before, you're literally talking about your problems and then you walk out and you feel better. Well, because we've just released all of that angst and someone's validated. I have the right to be angry. I have the right to be upset. I have the right to feel left out and be upset about it. But let me give you a creative outlet for that. Or maybe when they get older, look at what she did to my blouse. I'd like to take one of hers and rip it up. That's sick. You can't do that. Instead, I think your sister needs to know how enraged you are in writing. Helping my child write down feelings could be a helpful thing. All right. So these are all potential ways when it comes to just acknowledging feelings. That is a huge, huge piece of the whole sibling rivalry responses. Now, does it make all the feelings go away? It's not. And they're not going to go away. I mean, we're human beings. Conflict is a part of life. Just being in it with one other person in the room eventually will lead to conflict. So giving them ways to validate those feelings can be really helpful. All right. And research shows you've got to get the bad feelings out. If we don't allow the bad feelings a place to come out, then behavior is not likely to change. So some good phrases they recommend in the book are, I didn't know you felt that way. Oops, I did all sorts of typos. I didn't know you felt that way. I'm beginning to see how rough this whole situation is for you. It must be very hard for you to have him around all the time. You take as much time as you need to tell me what's bothering you. I want to know how you feel because your feelings are very important to me. Surprise! Allowing for bad feelings actually leads to good feelings a lot of the time. Not all of the time, but there's a lot of us where we won't even let them say those things. We won't even validate the right to be angry with their sibling or the right to want to not have a sibling. We don't even validate that. Those are the bad feelings. When we force our kids to stuff those down, then it actually leads to more bad feelings. When we actually give them a space, a safe space that's not aggressive, when we give them that safe space to validate and get those bad feelings out, that helps them learn how to manage those. But stuffing them down, you shouldn't even think that way. That doesn't help anybody. If you were to think about your adult responses to your kids when they're fighting, how would you like it if someone came in and said those same exact things to you? Would it leave you frustrated? Would it leave you feeling supported? So now when we're getting into maybe it's starting to turn into real fighting. What do we do there? Because a lot of us have to deal with that. For my boys, there were a couple of times where it got, well, more than a couple of times. It wasn't them fist fighting or something like that, but there was a lot of the verbal, like really, really mean, hurtful things. So as much as you can, ignore the mild quarrels. If no one's in danger of getting hurt, learn to ignore these things because sometimes, and you'll see here in a minute, they'll try to pull you in almost as their secret way of proving whose side you're and then nobody wins. If the noise bothers you, you can choose to leave the room. Or, another one that I really like is The Parenting with Love and Logic. That's a great book. There's a strategy for sibling arguments in there where you're like, oh man, it's really draining my energy that I'm having to listen to you guys argue. All right, go ahead. I'm gonna start my timer. You guys owe me $1 a minute while you keep fussing about this. And then they're gonna keep fussing. And then when they're done, you're like, okay, you owe me $17. But you know, charge them for you having to listen to it if they're doing that stuff. It's amazing how quickly that can die away when there's a cost to those mild quarrels. But I mean, we can't expect perfection from our kids, just like we don't have perfection. If you're in a romantic relationship and you never fight, I don't know. Is that actually, are you connected? Sometimes that can be a sign of apathy. No, it doesn't mean you have to fight all the time to prove that you love each other, but disagreement and conflict is a sign of connection. Now, when sibling rivalry turns into real fighting, like physical or verbal fighting, you have to step in because it's your job to keep your kids safe. And that's where some of that real damage can happen. That's something like with my older brother and my younger sister. I mean, they had to have some deep conversations as young adults, when they were in their 20s, to really work through some of that stuff. And, she apologized for some things, he apologized for some things, and they were able to work that out. But there were some really hurtful things that were said. All right. So there is kind of a way when we are correcting children, um, that we can use this thing called the FLAC method, where I'm still going to validate their feelings. I can see you're angry, but I'm going to still set limits. But we are not allowed to hit our brother. What are some alternatives? Either you guys can figure out a way to play with the blocks and get along, or I'm going to have to put the blocks away. But you can always start off by acknowledging feelings. Me acknowledging feelings does not mean I'm telling them the behavior is okay. Nope. Feelings and behavior are two completely different things. Feelings definitely motivate certain behaviors, but they are completely different things. So this FLAC method is a gentler way to correct, but a firm way to correct. Hey, I can see you're really frustrated. I can see you're really, really angry. I can see you are very jealous right now, but we can still set the limits. However, we're not allowed to say hurtful things to our brother. However, we're not allowed to hit. We're not allowed to bite. If there are any alternatives that we can do where we can work on some choices, great, and let them know what the consequences will be. It's important to make a distinction between allowing feelings and allowing actions. We permit our children to express their feelings. We do not permit our children to hurt each other. And if they're hurting each other with words, words are not feelings. Words are an action. So we can say we're angry. We don't get to say you're a stupid idiot. That's hurtful. But we can say, I'm really angry with you right now. That's okay. Allowing them to express their feelings is okay, but we don't permit them to hurt each other with actions. Those are two separate things. All right. Here are some examples. I love the cartoons. It just helps it make sense for me. All right, stop hurtful behavior. Show how angry feelings can be discharged in a safe way. All right. Instead of, that's a nasty thing to do to the baby. She only touched your blocks. Instead, show them better ways to express their anger. No punching. Tell your sister how angry you are with your words, not your fists. Stay away from my blocks. I've just helped my child express with words that are not hateful and hurtful instead of with fists. No punching. Tell your sister how angry you are with your words, not your fists, and give them a chance to say that. All right. Here's another one. You stole my dime, you dirty thief. That's a terrible thing to call your brother. Show them better ways to express their anger. You sound furious, and I expect you to confront your brother without calling names. Let's try that again. I expect you to keep your hands off my money. That's being assertive. Aggressive is, you stole my dime, you dirty thief. Assertive, standing up for yourself and expressing what you believe, a really important social skill. I can coach them to do that. You sound furious. I expect you to confront your brother without calling names. I expect you to keep your hands off my money. That's crystal clear. So here's another one. Instead of, the greedy pig eats all the cookies, you've done the same to him. The typical responses that we'll have. Here's a different way to do it. Instead of name calling, tell him what you feel or what you'd like. I resent you taking all the cookies. I'd like you to leave some for me. Now, what if you have a child that can't say what they think? We can coach them to it. I wonder if what you'd like to say is, I don't like you taking all the cookies, and I'd like you to leave some for me. Is that what you would like to say? Because sometimes, especially the younger they are, we have to teach them and coach them how to do that, just like we taught and coached them how to say please and thank you. Okay. Now, what can we do when it does get physical or verbally aggressive? What is recommended? First off, describe what you see. If you walk in and the kids are fighting, I see two kids who are hitting each other and pulling hair. Whatever it is, describe what you see, set limits. Hands off now. Get off your brother. set those limits immediately. You describe what you see, you set the limits, and you separate. If we're just looking at this from a brain state of the brain, when they are angry enough to be physically fighting, they are in the part of their brain, the fight or flight part of their brain. There is no logical thinking going on. Your children do not have fully developed brains. So they're I call it in their T-Rex brain or in their amygdala, that fight or flight part of their brain. And it is completely overwhelmed the thinking part of their brain, which is, I probably shouldn't do this, that might hurt somebody. So we have to separate them. We have to create an opportunity for this part, a cool down period. Because if their whole body is coursing with adrenaline and cortisol, from that fight or flight getting pumped into their muscles that help them fight, that sibling that they're perceiving as a threat. It takes sometimes up to 30 minutes for that adrenaline and cortisol to work its way out of the body. If we jump right in and demand an instant apology, they're not sorry and they're not really learning from it. So describe what you see. I see you're hitting each other. Stop now, separate, and set a cool down period. All right. I need you guys to wait in your rooms for 15 minutes and then we're going to talk about this. It might, whatever that setting a cool down period looks like. That's also a time where you're not talking about it just yet because they can't hear you. If they're angry enough to get in a fight, a huge verbal fight or a huge physical fight, they're not in the state of mind where they can even hear what you have to say. Then, once we've cooled down, listen to each child's point of view and acknowledge their feelings. So I'm not telling that each of them what they did right. I'm getting their perspective. And you might have to do that separately. You might be able at that point to do that together. Just kind of depends on the kids. And work out a possible solution for dealing with the problem in the future. If this is over fighting over who gets to use the bike or fighting over the last snack or fighting over whatever it is that they're fighting over, or one kid goes into the other sibling's room and uses their stuff, that's where we can work out a possible solution. All right, if this happens again, what are we going to do differently? Um, so that's kind of the guideline. But the big thing is I want to walk in and describe what I'm seeing because I don't know who started it. If I jump to conclusions, I don't know. I'm just going to describe what I see. I see two kids who are hitting each other. Stop it now, separate them, cool down, and then we can listen and get each side of the story. All right. So here are some more cartoons that kind of help with that. All right. When the fighting is headed towards hurting, as part one described, I see one boy on a chair about to throw a truck and another boy about to hit with a baseball bat, and both of them are furious. I'm literally describing what I'm seeing. Here's my limits, which is the set the limits. This is dangerous. We must have a cool off period. Quick, you to your room and you to yours. So I've described what I've seen. I've set the limit. I separate them because I can't solve the problem or even do an investigation yet. And then that is really important. Then when we have that cool down period and we come back together, that's where we can problem solve. But that's what the describing sounds like. A lot of times kids aren't even self-aware of what they even look like or sound like. So that can be really helpful, important steps. All right, what about consequences? So if my child does choose to express their anger through hitting or verbally, being verbally abusive to their siblings, what are some potential consequences? So first off, we're going to describe set limits, separate, cool down, and then we can talk about the consequences. One that I already mentioned, is charge them for listening to conflict. That's a big parenting with love and logic response, where I'm going to charge you $1 a minute if I have to listen to you guys bicker over this. Or another one that I like, and this will be emailed to you too, is an energy drain consequence. So parenting with love and logic has this super great, the energy drain consequence where, man, when I see you guys fighting over something, it really drains my energy. Or if you know that one sibling is like harassing the other sibling, it really drains her energy. You're going to need to do her chores tonight. That'll give her some energy back. It might mean that the logical consequence is the sibling who's causing the conflict now has to do the chores of the sibling who is the victim. But I'm not saying you're a bad kid. I'm just saying, man, that really drains her energy. You're going to need to put some energy back. I'm going to need you to do her chores tonight. That could be a great consequence. It also could be a loss of privileges for whatever they're arguing about. If they're arguing about the Xbox, or they're arguing about the computer, or they're arguing about a certain toy or something like that, maybe that gets put away. If they can't figure out how to solve the problem and share, then remove what they're arguing about. And I've even heard of the term put the toy in timeout. Oh, this is going to be in timeout till you guys figure out how to that you guys can share it. And then a big one I really like is family meetings. So I'm going to skip forward a little bit. Okay. Let me skip forward and then we're going to come back. Don't worry. Let me get to the family meetings because I should have put this kind of up there. All right. So, hold on. Let me get to family meetings just so you kind of see. Family meetings are such a powerful thing that a lot of us don't use. If you have a ton of sibling rivalry going on, I would recommend having an established at least weekly family meeting. When I first remarried, and I had three sons from my first marriage. They were 9, 12, and 14. And then actually they're, yeah, 9, 12, and 14. And then 6 months later, we got pregnant and had our daughter together. So she had much older siblings. During that first, when we were first getting set up as a blended family, oh my gosh, the conflict between brothers really increased. When I was a single mom, for almost 5 years, there was so much conflict, and a lot of it, there were a lot of factors that were contributing to that conflict, just stress, financial stress, um, you know, having to go back and forth between two households, so many different things. So we had to have regular family meetings. That is a time when it's not in the middle of the conflict and you have a chance to problem solve, almost like a staff meeting. But family meetings don't have to all be about problem solving. You can set up the structure where they are very similar to, let me see if I can, I'm going to pull this out. Give me just a second. Let me, yeah, I've got this. So I'm going to show you guys this. This is guidelines for a family meeting. This will be sent to you. So with guidelines for a family meeting, meet at a regularly scheduled time, preferably on a weekly basis. That's a chance where we are addressing things that are problems in the family. Have an agenda in a strategic location. I actually have an agenda that goes with this where you can post this family meeting agenda on the refrigerator or somewhere in the house where any kid can put down what they want to talk about at this week's family meeting. If they know that they're going to have a chance to talk about it, then that could be, it helps them wait a little bit. Have family members share responsibility for being in charge of the meetings with the parents modeling for the first section. So, like, they should at least be school age children. And record meetings. Like have a spiral notebook where you're recording the things that you've decided as a family. Begin the meetings on a positive note while everyone going around and giving other family members a compliment. Address areas of concerns and give everyone a chance to talk. Everyone doesn't have to talk, but everyone has the opportunity to talk, and try to limit it to no more than 30 minutes. If this drags on for 2 to 3 hours, that's just too emotionally exhausting. Sometimes you might even use a timer. All right. Okay. Well, that's the time we're going to spend on it today. We still have a lot of stuff to talk about. Let's schedule another meeting in a couple of days. Sounds like we've got 2 family meetings we need to have this week. And end the family meeting with something fun. So it's incentivized to get together. I know this keeps stuff from getting brushed under the rug. And if all this stuff piles up, that's what leads to these big explosions. So, family meetings, if you have a ton of sibling rivalry, start scheduling weekly family meetings at least. And that could be a super, super helpful thing to address the stuff. Everyone have ways to solve the problem, but not when you're in the heat of the moment. So and those handouts will be sent to you. But family meetings can be a really, really powerful thing that will help with that. All right, let me see where we were at. Da, 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 da. Okay, let me go back to where we were and get as much. Okay, here's another cool thing. Let me share this slideshow and make sure I'm showing you the right screen. Okay. Yes, Angela, I will send that template via email for the family meeting. It's already created, and so that way you guys can use that and print those off, and it could be really helpful. Now, there's another thing too. Once everyone's cooled down, because no one's going to give a sincere apology when they are still angry. There's what's called the 4-part apology. Forget the I'm sorry. No, you're not. All right, acknowledge what they did. I used your stuff without asking. I apologize for using your stuff without asking. What can I do to make things right? This allows the person who's been offended to tell them what they need for relationship repair. And so they can then recommit. All right, I will no longer take your stuff without asking, and I will do this, next time. But this is a more detailed, sincere way of apologizing. You teach it just like we teach manners, but acknowledge what they did. They have to take ownership for what they chose to do. It might be both siblings apologizing, but this four-part apology really allows for some potential relationship repair. All right. Acknowledge what they did. I apologize for that. What can I do to make it right? That's that relationship repair piece. And then once the other siblings decided what they can do to make it right, then they recommit to stop doing the behavior and what they're going to do different next time. This is a social skill. Now, if they carry this apology because they've had so much practice with the four-part apology into adulthood, man, they're going to make a great partner. They're going to make a great friend. They're going to make a great parent when they've learned to do this. All right. Now, some other suggestions from the book. When there is aggression, a lot of times what we do is when we jump in, we wind up paying all the attention to the one who did all the hitting. They're getting in trouble, but they're actually getting the attention. So, one thing they recommend is don't give attention to the aggressor. For example, these two siblings are fighting. Gimme, no, no, she bit me. And the parent walks in. What's going on here? Did you bite your sister? How many times do I have to tell you not to do that? You're a bad girl. You're to leave your sister alone. You come with me. I can't even trust you. Well, here the kid who just got bit is still sitting there on the bed, completely ignored. All the attention is going to the naughty little child that's just bit their brother. That's a very common dynamic because we're so quick to jump on, and attention, even if it's negative, any attention is attention. What if we responded this way? Give me that. No, ow, she bit me. Bit you? Let me see. Oh my, it's all red. That must really hurt. People are not for biting. Your sister needs to learn to ask for what she wants with words, even when she's angry. Come on, let me put some ice on your arm. Mom's now coaching what should happen, but also giving attention to the person who got hurt. That kiddo that did the biting, they're not getting all the attention. Sometimes they'll actually become physically aggressive just to get our attention. They stop all the things. And then the kid who got hurt, they're frustrated. What if we gave attention to the person who got injured? That might change a pattern of behavior. All right. So that's kind of done a little bit of acknowledging feelings, some suggestions for when things might be getting physical, verbal, some possible consequences. What about sharing? This is a tough one. I know I share everything except my cheesecake. Don't ask me to share my cheesecake. Um, Gosh, it was so hard as a mom when I'd get my birthday cheesecake and then they want their piece and my piece. And I'm like, no, stay away. But this is a very common thing that kids battle over. Okay, here's an example of two sisters fighting over a shirt. Oh, can I borrow this? It matches my skirt perfectly. No, it's mine, but you never wear it. But I might. Just for today, please, our class is having a party. I said no. Mom, take your hands off of it. Argument continues. If we side in favor of the property owner. This blouse belongs to your sister, but I only wanted it for today. Let's not have any more discussion about it. Give it back to her. Then the person who owns it, they're thinking in their minds, I won, and the other sister, I lost. What about if we sided on the favor of the kid who wanted to borrow it? Oh, let your sister have it. You never wear that blouse anyway anymore. But mom, I might wear it. Now you know you've outgrown it. Don't be selfish. Give it to your sister. Now the little sister thinks I won, and the older sister thinks I lost. What if we responded in this way? This is where this would be not a minor and not a serious sibling rivalry. It would be that in the middle, kind of significant where they might need some coaching, they might need some perspective, but I'm not going to fix it for them. So here's what a different way it might sound and look like. All right, so mom walks in. Boy, you two sound pretty upset with each other. I need the blouse for a class party and it doesn't even fit her anymore. I see. So you want to wear it to the party. But mom, it's my favorite blouse. So it's still special to you, even though you've outgrown it. Well, it's your blouse and it's your decision. But if you want to work something out with your sister, that would be between the two of you. I'll trade you. You can wear my new silver earrings all week if I can wear your blouse just for today. Oh, okay, but don't spill anything on it. Thanks. What mom has done here is she's helped give words to their feelings and their perspectives, almost like a therapist would do, almost like a referee, where we're stepping in, we're acknowledging what we see going on, but we're not solving the problem for them. We're leaving the final decision up to them. But responding in that way teaches negotiation skills, conflict resolution skills. I'm not solving the problem for them. I'm stepping in and doing that. All right. Now, all right, we're right at 7:30. I always go just a little bit over. So, a few more little conclusion ideas on ways that you might be able to reduce conflict. First off, be proactive. Try to spend individual time with each child when you can. Use the strategies from the 5 love languages of children. And I actually include, and you'll get the presentation emailed to you. I included the link to that 1 hour class that's recorded. If you use the strategies in the 5 love languages of children, I'm literally showing attention to my child in a way that makes them feel loved. If those needs are met, that's huge. For one of my sons, my youngest son, when our daughter was 2 years old and he was in 6th grade, he started acting like, I mean, he got in trouble all the time. And I was constantly having to badger him and like, Colby, put this up. Colby, hang this up. Colby, stop doing that with your little, Colby, Colby, Colby. And so one night when I was putting him to bed, I'm like, Colby, what's going on with you? I mean, all you do is back talk. And I mean, it's like I've lost you. And he said, well, all you do is boss me around. And I'm like, well, I'm going to listen to how I talk to you for the next few days. And he was right. All I did was boss him around. His love language was words of affirmation and quality time. Well, where was all our quality time going? Mine was taking care of a toddler, bathing her, feeding her, getting her to bed, making sure she took her naps. It was all consuming and it was working. I'd given up a ton of quality time with him. And most of his words now were negative. For every 20 things I said to him, um, about at least 17 or so of them were a command. So he was right. He was getting too much negative. When I shifted gears and started being much more positive, verbal positive, and carving out some individual quality time with him, his whole behavior changed. And there wasn't this, you know, 12-year-old boy bickering with his 2-year-old sister. It met his needs. It was proactive. And remember, you treat each child uniquely. You can't treat them equally. It's not possible. And so there's more things that'll be in the handouts that I send you. So I actually have these handouts where I did a book study on this, like a book club with parents. Gosh, it was all the way back 2008, I think. And what I did is I typed up all the notes from the different chapters of Siblings Without Rivalry and kind of gave some good summaries, some good phrases that were recommended in the books. And so if you don't have time or have the ability to read the whole book, which I highly, highly recommend, that might be a good resource for you. I have some articles on birth order. I have some really cool articles too on, some cool, clever strategies for helping your kids get along. Even simple things like this one mom had her sons bake every Sunday together, and just that quality time of baking together and doing something together would be helpful. If they were caught calling each other nasty names, then one of the consequences was you had to say 5 good things about your brother or sister that you just said some mean things about. So it had some really cute ideas for building the bond and responding to some of that sibling rivalry. So I've got a lot of different resources, but in an hour, we can't cover everything. So we didn't even get to everything tonight, but it really gives you some great strategies that might be helpful. But hopefully now you have some ideas of first off, they got to get the bad feelings out. Help them give a voice to their feelings by either saying you are furious or you wish this would happen or a creative outlet. When they might be getting physically or verbally aggressive, that's a different scenario. So we have to step in, describe what we see, set the limit, what's not okay, separate them and allow for that cool down period so that we can then come back together and problem solve. And family meetings are a great way to problem solve. That can be really, really helpful. And when it comes to sharing, if there are problem toys that they can't seem to get along with, have a family meeting about it. We had problems sharing the trampoline and someone kept getting hurt. We had a family meeting about it and they came up with guidelines for how long you could jump on the trampoline by yourself and what the consequence would be if you interrupted their turn. They figured it out and it was amazing how much nicer trampoline time became. So help them learn how to share stuff. You might have to coach, but you don't solve it all by yourself. There's no way we could cover everything in an hour. So hopefully when you look through the different handouts, you'll get some other ideas. I did see one quick thing in the chat section. Oh, okay. It was just a thank you. You're welcome, Angela. All right. Anything that you would add, Erin, before we go?
No, I like always take so many notes, and I've heard your presentations, and you're just a wealth of information. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And people were saying how great it was. So thank you, though, for everybody that has joined us. I will tell you that we will have one November 19th as well. That is the power, I believe it's the power of the connection of kids, I think is how but the flyer will be attached to the email that will be going out. And then in December, we have taking care of the caregiver and compassion fatigue. So that'll be great as well. But again, YouTube, podcast, if you have any questions or we can help support your family in any way, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. And again, Lauren, thank you so much. Lauren, she didn't tell you this, but has been on a field trip all day and
All
has
day.
barely made it home in time to do this. So we appreciate you giving up your evening to be with us. So thank you, everybody, so much. And we hope everybody has a great evening.